Danny's Secret Fox. Chapter 1. The Night Visitor. Do you want to know something amazing? Asked Danny's dad. No, said Danny. He was hardly ever in a good mood at breakfast time. Last night at work, said Danny's dad, a fox came in through the big main gates. It just walked right in when they opened them up for a lorry. Danny stopped crunching his cornflakes. He put down his spoon. What, just walked right in? He asked. He couldn't help sounding surprised. Dad worked the night shift at a chemical factory. Danny had been there once just to look at it. It was an eerie place right out on the edge of town. It had a high wire fence around it. Danger, it said on the fence. Keep out. At night, the factory was all lit up. You could see it for miles around. Great long pipes snaked in all directions. Huge vats hissed and bubbled. It smelled like rotten eggs. That place gives me the creeps, shivered Danny. That fox must be brave to go in there. Oh, or starving, said Dad. He went on. I threw it a cheese sandwich. It gulped it down as if it hadn't eaten for weeks. It looks very young, not much more than a cub, really. Danny grunted and went back to his cornflakes. After that, when Dad came in from work, Danny always asked about the fox. The fox came every night to the chemical factory. It waited for the big gates to open and strolled in with the lorries. It wasn't scared of their great rumbling wheels. Too young and stupid to be scared, said Danny's dad. Chapter 2. The Fox with Fiery Eyes. One Saturday morning, when Danny was still in bed, his dad came in from work. He poked his head round the bedroom door. Guess what? You'll never guess what that cheeky young devil did last night. What cheeky young devil? Yawned Danny. The fox, said Dad. Last night it came right up to me. It ate a cheese sandwich right out of my hand. Suddenly Danny was wide awake. Wow, really? Yes, it's getting very tame and choosy. Now it just eats the cheese slice and leaves the bread behind. I didn't know foxes like cheese slices, said Danny. This one does. Can I come and feed it? Um, begged Danny. Just once, please? No way, said Dad. They don't let children in the factory. It's too dangerous. You know that. But next night, Dad took a photo of the fox with his Instamatic camera. Look at his eyes, cried Danny, amazed. The fox's eyes were glowing with green fire. Oh, that's just the flash on the camera, explained his dad. It doesn't really look like that. But Danny wasn't listening. He put the photo in his pocket. He wanted more than ever to feed the fox, the magic fox with fiery eyes. The hero fox who wasn't scared by the factory with its hissing pipes and stinking bubbling vats. But then it seemed as though his chance had gone. They closed down the chemical factory. Danny's dad was lucky. He got a new job in another factory. But in all the upset and confusion, everyone forgot about the fox except Danny. And one day, he set out on his bike to see if it was still there. It was winter now, dark nights, and he was only allowed until 5 o'clock. He took cheese sandwiches wrapped up in silver foil just as his dad had done. And he told nobody where he was going. The fox was his secret now. Danny leaned his bike up against an empty oil drum. It had been a wasteland where the factory had been. The buildings were like empty shells. All the windows had been smashed. Soon bulldozers would have moved in and flattened the whole lot. Danny crouched down behind the pile of bricks. That fox won't come home, he was thinking. I might as well go home. But just as he was wheeling his bike away, he saw the young fox. It was picking its way through the rubble. It wasn't as red and sleek as Danny had imagined. In fact, you could easily mistake it for a mangy dog. And when it moved closer, he saw that its eyes were brown, not fiery and green. But somehow that didn't matter. Danny tucked his sandwich from his pocket. Very gently, he leaned his bike against the oil drum so it didn't clang and scared the fox away. Then he crouched down, hardly daring to breathe. The fox came closer. Brave fox, said Danny softly. Come on, brave fox. It was so close now that Danny caught a whiff of its strong, foxy scent. There! The fox had whipped the sandwich right out of Danny's fingers, and just as Dad had said, it dropped the sandwich on the ground. It twitched the cheese slice out of with its sharp pointed teeth. "Wow!" whispered Danny, thrilled. The fox turned and stared at him. Then it was off, trotting like a little dog through the wasteland. "I'll come and feed you every day. I'll look after you. I won't tell anybody," Danny promised the fox. "You'll be my secret." The secret fox slid away into the gray evening light. One whisk of a fairy tale and it was gone. But the very next day Danny broke his promise. Chapter 3. Danny Breaks His Promise. It was because of Scott. Scott was big and clumsy. People at school were scared of him. He had no friends. Scott had spiky hair and scowling face, and he was always trying to pick fights. Sensible people kept right out of his way. He was trying to pick a fight with Danny now. "You're too scared to fight," Scott sneered at Danny. "You're too scared to do anything, you wimp." "No, I'm not," said Danny. He knew he should have walked away like a sensible person. He knew he should have kept his mouth shut, but he couldn't help himself. "I fed a fox. I can feed it right out of my hand, like this," and Danny stretched out his arm to show how he fed the fox. "I've tamed it, and all on my own. You couldn't do that, could you? Could you?" And Danny even dragged the photo out of his pocket and shoved it under Scott's nose. "Look there if you don't believe me." Scott scowled. He peered at the photo. "Where's this fox then?" "Down at the old factory," boasted Danny. "Where my dad used to work." He could have kicked himself. "You fool," he told himself, and then he thought, "Perhaps Scott doesn't know where it is." But Scott did know. "I know where that is," he said. "My big brother's got an air rifle. He likes shooting them. I'll tell him about your fox." That night Danny cycled down to the wasteland, but he did not have any cheese sandwiches with him. Instead he leaned his bike against the old drum. He picked up some big stones. Then he pulled them behind him and sat, waiting. He couldn't see anyone else about. There was nobody with an air rifle. But one night Danny was sure Scott's big brother would come down here looking for some target practice. "You and your big mouth," Danny said angrily to himself as he crouched there shivering. He knew what he had to do. There it was, the young fox. It was trotting confidently round a pile of bricks looking for Danny. It was expecting cheese sandwiches. But Danny stood up. "Clear off," he screamed. "Clear off and don't come back here any more." Then Danny threw the first stone. The fox yelped in pain and surprise. It backed off. Danny chucked another and another. "Go away. It's not safe here any more." Danny chased his fox, howling at it, shrieking. The young fox went streaking through the rubble. Danny stumbled after, pelting everything he could lay his hands on, but most of the stones missed. You can't aim very well when your eyes are full of tears. The next day at school, Scott said, "I was lying about the air rifle. You didn't believe me, did you? Everyone knows I haven't got a big brother. I've only got a baby sister. Ha ha ha." Danny cycled to the factory the next night and the next, but the fox didn't come back. Danny felt empty inside, and very sad, as if he'd lost something precious. All he had left was the photo of the fox. He kept it in his pocket, and now and again he took it out to look at those magical fiery eyes. But then even that was gone. He left the photo in the pocket of his jeans, and Mom washed them. The photo became a handful of gray soggy pieces. Chapter 4. Scott. Winter turned into spring. Spring turned into early summer. The nights were lighter now, and Danny was allowed out until 7 o'clock. But he hadn't cycled down to the factory for weeks. Now his fox had gone, there was nothing to go there for. "Serves you right," Danny told himself. "You told Scott about the secret fox. You spoiled everything." Then one evening Danny set out on his bike for the wasteland. He was looking for some wood to build a go-kart. Go-karts were the latest craze. All the kids were making them. He cycled round a corner and he nearly rode slap bang into Scott, who was crouching in the road. Oh no, thought Danny, breaking like mad. I'm for it now. He skidded to a halt. His front wheel brushed Scott's brand new white trainers. It left a muddy mark. Escape, escape, Danny's brain screamed at him. Right like the wind, maybe he won't know it's you. But it was too late to escape. Scott was already talking to him. You silly little sparrow, said Scott. What's that? Said Danny wearily, staring down at Scott's spiky head. What did you just say then? Scott scowled up at him. He seemed puzzled to see Danny there. He didn't seem to know he'd almost been run over. I'm talking to the sparrow, he told Danny. Danny gulped. You never knew where you were with Scott. You couldn't tell what he was thinking. He might decide to get mad with me, or he might not. Danny waited. Look, said Scott, at this silly little sparrow. It's gone and broke its wing. Scott's hands were big and clumsy like a bear's paws. He held them up to Danny. Cupped in Scoop's hand was a baby sparrow. One of its wings was useless, was broken, spread out like a fan. "What are you going to do with it?" asked Danny. "You're not going to hunt it, are you?" He said the wrong thing. He jumped back as Scott roared, "'Cause I'm not going to hurt it. I'm going to take it home with me, aren't I? I'm going to I'm going to set its wing, make it better, then I'll let it go again." Danny was so surprised that he forgot to be scared of Scott. He surprised, too, how gentle Scott was with the sparrow. He had never seen Scott gentle before, only scary. "Can you really do that?" asked Danny. "Can you mend its wing?" "My dad showed me," said Scott. "You use a long stick as a splint, and you feed them water out of the eyedropper. Then you give them tiny worms with tweezers." Scott stroked the sparrow's head very, very gently with his fingernail. It cheeped at him. It opened its pale yellow beak very wide. "You'll be all right," Scott told the sparrow. "Don't be scared. I'll look after you." He got up out of the road. The baby sparrow was cuddled tenderly in his great bear's paw hands. Then he felt his mouth hanging open. He couldn't help it. Then, as if he knew what Danny was thinking, Scott said, "I like animals. See, animals are all right. Wait a minute," said Danny. "If you like animals, why did you say all that about your brother shooting my fox?" "I told you," said Scott. "I haven't got a brother. I like foxes. I wouldn't let anyone shoot them." "But why did you say it?" asked Danny again. He knew it was risky. He knew it was risky challenging Scott like this, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't help thinking about how he'd driven away his fox, all because of what Scott had said. "I don't know," said Scott miserably. "I don't know why I said it. I just get like that sometimes." And he gave a sad, puzzled shake of his head as if it was a big mystery to him. Danny watched Scott shamble off, carrying the sparrow with the broken wing. Danny's mouth was still hanging open. He could hardly believe what he'd just seen. "If I told them at school," thought Danny, "about Scott and the baby sparrow, they'd think I've gone crazy." But he had no time to think about that now. It was getting late. He had to get to the wasteland and find the wood for his gold cart, and get back home before 7 o'clock. He jumped back on his bike. He had to cycle through a ring of bulldozers. Like great yellow monsters, they crouched round the edge of the wasteland. They were waiting for tomorrow. Tomorrow they would move in and flatten what was left of the buildings. Danny propped his bike against the empty oil drum. "There's a good bit," he thought, pouncing on a piece of wood. Then out on this corner of his eyes he saw a movement behind a pile of bricks. He looked again. It was only a skinny stray dog, a brown one. No, it wasn't. He came back. It was Danny's fox looking for food. Chapter 5. The fox came closer. It sniffed at Danny's hand. "It knows who I am," thought Danny, threw it to bits. "It remembers me." "I didn't mean it," Danny told the fox. "When I threw stones at you, it's too hard to explain. But I didn't mean it." honest. The fox licked his hands as if it understood. In his excitement, Danny dropped the piece of wood. He wasn't interested in go-karts anymore. Wait there, he told his fox. Don't go away. He grabbed his bike. I'll be back, I promise. Cheese sandwiches, he was thinking as he pedaled home. I hope there's lots of cheese slices in our fridge. He flung his bike down by the back door, skidded into the kitchen, yanked open the fridge. Great! He pulled out a handful of cheese slices and dashed towards the back door. He was halfway through it when a voice said, "And just where do you think you're going?" It was Mom, looking cross, tapping her watch. "Do you know what time it is? You're 10 minutes late, and it's past 7. "Oh, please, Mom, please. The fox is back. I've got to go. Got to go right now and feed him." Danny was leaping about with impatience. "Please, Mom, can I come in at 8 tonight? Please, Mom, just this once. I've got really important things to do." "But Mom, not much." "No way," she said. "Rules are rules. If I let you stay out till 8 tonight, it'll be 8:30 tomorrow night and 9 the night after. It won't, I promise." It was no good. Danny tried every trick he knew. He nagged and begged and pleaded. He told his mom she was the best mom in the world, but it was still no good. So he stomped off to bed, and all night long he fretted. He tossed and turned. He couldn't sleep. He was desperate to go and feed his fox. "He'll think I'm not coming," Danny thought over and over again. Next morning, as soon as Mom would let him, Danny zoomed out of the house. He stuffed some cheese slices in his coat pocket. He pedaled so fast his wheels were just a blur. He was almost at the wasteland when he saw Scott. Scott was all on his own as usual. He was always on his own. Danny did not stop. It flashed through his mind that he'd like to ask Scott about the baby sparrow, but he didn't stop. For one thing, he didn't have time, and for another thing, he still wasn't sure about Scott. And what if Scott said, "You talking to me?" and acted as if he'd never cradled a sick baby bird in his hands? What then? So Danny pedaled on. He heard the noise before he saw the wasteland. It was an angry, snarling noise, like a whole sky full of wasps. He turned a corner. The bulldozers had already started work. The yellow monsters had come alive. They were jerking their yellow arms about. They had the old factory surrounded. They were moving in on it, ready to crunch it in their jaws. And somewhere, lost in all that noise and dust, was Danny's fox. Danny threw his bike to the ground. He looked frantically, but all he could see were roaring machines. No fox. Where was his fox? And then he saw it. His fox was outside the ring of bulldozers, running to and fro, to and fro. It was frantic like Danny. "Get out of the way," Danny called to his fox. If it didn't watch out, the fox would be dragged under those massive wheels. Why didn't it run away? Why was it risking its life? "Get out of the way," Danny shrieked to his fox as it tried to dodge past the bulldozer. "What are you doing? You'll get killed." But the fox made another dash. Great wheels almost crushed it into dirt, but it leaped out of the way. Still it wouldn't run away. "Run!" yelled Danny helplessly, but he couldn't even hear his own voice above the roaring machines. "She's trying to get to her cub," said a voice in Danny's ear. Danny jumped around, startled. It was Scott. Scott, the last person in the world Danny wanted to see. "The fox is a vixen," said Scott, shouting for above the din. "She's a little vixen, and look there. That's her den. Can you see it?" Danny strained his eyes through the clouds of dust. "Yes, I can see it." And there was a hole like a big rabbit bucket burrow under an old brick wall, and the bulldozer were heading straight for that wall. They would topple it as if it were made of Lego. and then and the den would be buried under heaps of bricks. I bet she's got a cub in there, yelled Scott. She's trying to save it, but the dozers will get there first. Oh no, yelled Danny. Out of the hole came a cub no bigger than a kitten. Its legs were wobbly. It stood at the edge of the den. It began meowing for its mother. Why can't they see it? Why, cried Danny. Why can't the driver see it? But the drivers high up in their cabs didn't see the fox cub. The bulldozer rolled on. The vixen trapped outside the machines began a high yelping bark. The cub heard it and began to totter towards her, right in the path of the bulldozers. I'm going to get it, asked Bulldozer. I'm going to get it, shouted Danny. He dashed forward, but someone grabbed his coat. It was Scott. Let me go, you big bully, cried Danny, struggling to get free. But Scott was too strong. He pushed Danny over. You wait here, he said. I can run faster than you. I'll get it. Danny scrambled to his feet. The machine stirred and crashed forward. Clouds of dust rose. The vixen's shrill bark went on and on. The cub stopped, bewildered and scared. It started to back away. Too late. Scott was running as if his heart would burst. Too late. Come back, Scott, yelled Danny. You can't make it. Come back. Danny started to run too. Then an amazing thing happened. One bulldozer stopped, its yellow arms high in the air. Then another cut its engine. And then another. The dust died down. Men in hard hats got out of the bulldozer and strolled away towards a little hut. It was a tea break time. There was silence. It was peaceful and quiet. You could even hear a bird singing. Scott walked right into the center of the ring of bulldozers. There was no danger now. They were as still as statues. He walked up to the little shivering cub. He bent down, but before he could pick it up, the vixen nipped in. She picked the cub up all by the hand of its neck and went trotting off with it. Daniel watched her as she crossed the wasteland and vanished out of sight. Scott came back panting. Well, that was close, he said. That was a crazy thing to do, said Danny. A really dangerous thing to do. You would have done it, said Scott, if I hadn't pushed you over and I didn't stop you. Wouldn't you? Danny said nothing. She gave Scott a grin. It was only a quick grin, but it was sort of friendly. If you had told Danny that one day he would grin at Scott in a sort of friendly way, he would have said, You're joking. Scott said slowly, You're alright, you are. That was all he said, but Danny felt pleased as if Scott had something really nice about him. Danny looked out uh, looked out over the wasteland. Do you think she'll come back? He asked Scott. I wouldn't mind, said Scott, but if I was her, I'll take that cup somewhere else, somewhere safe. It's too dangerous here. Danny sighed and closed his eyes. He wished he still had his photo. Then suddenly he saw a picture in his mind. It was better than any photo. It was a fox, a wonderful fox, a brave magical fox with green fiery eyes.